Welcome to this video from In 28 Minutes. Thanks for helping us provide awesome learning experiences to more than 300,000 learners across multiple platforms, Udemy, Safari, and Pact. Let's welcome our lead instructor, Rangarao Karanam. In this video, we would be talking about why do we need Maven? What is Maven? What is dependency management and why do we need it? Let's get started. Whenever we develop a Java project, what do we need? Let's say I'm developing a microservice. One of the things I would need is Spring MVC because that's the framework that I would want to use to develop the microservice. The second thing I would need is the Spring framework. The third thing I would need is Hibernate. Are just these three dependencies sufficient? I would also need what are the things Hibernate needs to work? What are the things Spring needs to work? What are the things that Spring MVC needs to work? For example, Spring MVC converts the Java beans to JSON. Typically, REST services give a JSON response back, right? So you need some framework to convert the bean to JSON. Which framework does that? Typically, it's Jackson framework. So if you go on like this, you'd need that in a typical project, simple project where you'd want to expose REST API with Hibernate as the backend and you'd want to use JPA, you'd see that you'd need a number of libraries, maybe 25, 30, 40 libraries. So in a project, how do you handle these stuff? How do you download these jars and put them in the project so that I can use them? Do you want to do that manually? Then what would happen is each time there is a new version, you need to change. Let's say Spring, there's a new release, Spring 4 to Spring 5. What would we need to do? We need to download the Spring 5 and put it in our project repository. Now Spring 5 might need Jackson, a different version. So you need to analyze that. You need to find that out and download the right version of Jackson. This is what we were doing a decade back. Doing everything manually, identifying the compatible jars, finding out and doing things manually. That's where Maven came into picture. The same discussion that we are having here about Maven is also applicable to another dependency management tool called Gradle. So Maven and Gradle do the same thing. This is called dependency management. Any Maven project contains something called pom.xml, project object model.xml. So what we'll tell in the pom.xml is what dependency we would want. We would want to use Spring Boot Starter Data JPA. We would want to use Spring Boot Starter Web. We would want to use Spring Boot Starter Actuator. So these are the jars that we would want to make use of. What would Maven do? Maven would download all these jars and make them available for us. What does Maven do? Maven downloads these jars and makes them available for us in the Maven dependencies. So I don't really need to go out and download the Spring Boot jar. I don't need to go out and download the Spring jar. All that is done by Maven. All that is taken care of by Maven dependency management. There is something called a centralized Maven repository where all the artifacts are stored. Maven uses these two keywords, group ID and artifact ID. In addition to that, you need something called a version. So using group ID, artifact ID and the version, Maven would be able to go to the repository and get the right versions of all the jars. So this is one of the most important features of Maven. This is called dependency management, where you just need to say, I would want this dependency. What Maven does is it goes and gets the jar for this, and not only for this, it would also get the jars that this project needs. So data JPA, for example, needs Hibernate, JPA, and a few other jars. Maven would download all the dependencies of the dependency as well. These are called transitive dependencies. So it downloads the dependencies and the dependencies of the dependencies as well, the transitive dependencies. That's why Maven is very, very important. The thing is, in the Java world, Maven does a lot more things than just the dependency management. Whenever you want to deploy the application on a different environment, now I would want to take this project and I would want to deploy it in an environment. Will I go and put the code in there? Will I copy this code and try and run it in a Unix or a Linux environment? No. What I would do is I would need to create a target file. I would need to create a jar or a var, a Java archive or a web archive. So if you do mvn clean install, what would happen? If you do a right click, run as Maven install, what would happen is a jar would be created in the target folder, and I can take that jar and I can run the application wherever I would want. I don't need the entire code. I can just use the jar and run the application. That process is called build. So Maven is also a build tool. You can take your code, compile it, and create a single archive file like a jar or a WAR file. So the two important responsibilities of Maven are dependency management, managing what jars you would need, and the transitive dependencies. The second important thing is the build, where you can build one file which you can take and use it as the deployable unit. In 28 Minutes is providing awesome learning experiences to 300,000 learners across platforms like Udemy, Safari Online, and Pact. We have clocked million hours of learning in the last few months. The question is, what do you want to learn next? We are building solutions to help programmers at all levels. You can learn programming with our awesome courses on Java, Python, and JavaScript. You can learn full stack development with REST APIs and microservices with a wide range of frameworks like Spring Boot, Node.js, React, Angular, and Spring Cloud. We have 200 plus videos to help you start your journey from a programmer to a software architect. We have videos to help you learn frameworks, industry trends, including things like microservices, learn the best practices in architecture, design, and code quality. Thanks for watching. Keep learning in 28 minutes.